welcome here on stage with a hand for Professor Dr. Niels Nagel. Thank you very much. Dear fitness community, I'm happy to share a few thoughts about functional training. It is not only my thoughts, it is the result of a working group composed of different experts from different fitness experts from the segments functional training. You can see in Hall 9, there's a huge demand for functional training. And this is, of course, also a market segment that we promote. And when you do such a thing, then you, of course, have to ask yourself, is everything we do and the way we present functional training really designed in such a way that a sound growth in the interest of the customer can be ensured? And this is exactly what I would like to ponder on together with you. Let me introduce myself briefly. The facilitator already said so. I'm not only a professor for sports management at the Düsseldorf University, I also head the office for the Center for Fitness Studios. I'm a consultant. For 20 years, I've worked as a consultant in leisure and fitness amenities. Since '96, I've been in the fitness sector. And as you can see, I also have a very, successful sportsman's past. Let us return to functional training. If somebody saw a room with this piece of equipment, everyone, you would think what you do is functional training. Let me depart from this thought here. Let me ask you, who is really doing functional training? How can you actually explain this? Why is he doing functional training when he's trying to climb? And if he does the same exercise against a wall, then this is not referred to as functional training. The breast press, for instance, when I actually promote my breast muscles, nobody would actually call this functional training. But as soon as we work with free weights, many refer to this as functional training. Why is this so? So you can see the term functional training is very hard to define. Let me use a metaphor. Just imagine you've saved for a long time to dine at a fantastic restaurant, and what you're being served is a burger from a fast food restaurant in an aluminum container. And you would say, well, I haven't expected this. This is not quality. But if the same product is served at a fast food restaurant, you'd say acceptable. Yeah, right quality. So what we refer to as quality really depends on where a service is delivered, where a dish is served, and what we expect from it. And it also depends on what we understand by functional training. And when I now look at science, well, you might think, well, they know what they're talking about. Well, let me give you a few examples of scientific journals. I've brought along some statements on functional training. And what it shows, or what they show, is what scientists understand by functional training is not consistent. One says, okay, functional training is basically not new. This is a trend that is a renaissance of traditional athletics training. So it's a back to the roots, a new outfit, and with new marketing. In other words, this guy is saying, well, functional training is an old hat. We're just remarketing it, rebranding it to generate some growth. Okay, let's leave the statement as that. Another guy says, to my mind, there is a risk in this boom. Some exercises turn to be like circus acts. They're no longer really functional because we're losing sight of the real aim. This is a very critical statement on a valuable type of training, but please always remember how to represent this segment to the outside world. Everyone, especially those training at regular intervals, are so much immersed that they have forgotten how to customize the message for average customers. So we have to, in general, think about how to sell functional training to our customers, what we should tell our customers about functional training. Then another scientist said, well, very often this is just like a justification of what you do as a personal trainer. The trainer doesn't really know what he's doing, and to justify it, he calls it functional training because it sounds nice. Or another statement, functional is everything that that supports prevention, and this actually goes one step further, because I am convinced really that in future, to generate further growth for the fitness market, we have to bring people to the club for whom training as such is no training as a means in itself, but as a means to an end, in order to ensure or to buy into a higher quality of life. So functional training serves a purpose, it has a task, and it only makes sense if it actually fits the setting and improves an ability in regular everyday life. So if we put some thought to what functional training can mean and why it is different, we could say, if I think about functional training, what is non-functional training then? And we said, well, non-functional training is basically dysfunctional training. So the same exercise for an athlete can actually produce a positive effect, whereas for another subject, it can produce an adverse effect. If it overexerts you, if there's no regeneration period that is sufficient, if I apply wrong techniques, if I go for one-sided loads, I don't factor in enough time for regeneration, so that at the end of the day, I weaken the tendons and the ligaments instead of strengthening them. And then, in addition to the dysfunctional term, we've also worked out the term of non-functional. So non-functional training is an isolated training where I use big pieces of equipment to do isolated training. This is the reason why pull-ups in the free setting can be for functional training, but when I actually do the same thing in a standard piece of equipment, is non-functional. Because if you don't simulate an everyday movement or motion, so not just going, running and jumping, but within the context of certain sports, you simulate those sports. And if the primary aim is not to adapt the structure, the physical structure, according to which the movement processes can be improved. So functional training not only triggers hypertrophy, but it always aims to improve the quality of movement in view of the athlete or of the trained subject. So this is a very, very personal, customized element. So when you try to delimit this and phrase it or use it in one sentence, then the sentence would read like this: functional training must, in certain cases, be prepared by non-functional training in order to prevent functional training from producing dysfunctional effects, overtaxing the trained subject. So this is why we've tried, and this is how we've tried to delimit functional from non-functional or dysfunctional training. And the quality of this training is that we have cooperated with leading experts from this area, like Stefan Müller from the Gucker Kolleg. We have therefore come up with a definition for functional training. Functional training is always a setting-driven training, a setting-focused training. It always reflects or makes reference to the trained subject. This can be prevention, it can be rehabilitation, it can, of course, be sports. Yeah. For the circus artists, for instance, a certain exercise from functional training makes sense, an exercise that would overtax a regular subject, but it can also be the career setting, the professional setting. And the functional training wants to achieve the highest possible degree of individualization, of customization, with the aim of balancing, with the aim of doing away with motor deficits, and with the aim of efficiently increasing motor skills and abilities, so that office people don't suffer too much impairments after 10 hours of sitting in the office, or that assembly line workers who actually have to lift a sink for 8 days and put it and place it in the shelf without actually suffering back pain, or for sports people to run a little faster and score the goal. All experts from the various segments have seen this. Functional training should ensure to improve the health and performance of the trained subjects while always avoiding health damages. So the aim, apart from increasing strength, is always to avoid health impairments. If this is not the case, it is no longer a functional training in our reading. What does this mean, what I've highlighted in red? These are basically the guidelines we follow if we want to offer a high-quality functional training. Using the metaphor again, to get the customer what he or she has expected, so that we can actually accompany this customer in the long term. But the customer wants to work out something, achieve a certain quality at the club that actually helps him or her outside the club, to achieve aims outside the club. Setting-oriented or individualized training means that there's no right and or wrong. I like with equipment, breast press, for instance, or the leg press, or the squats machine. There's no right or wrong movement. With a view to the trained subjects, they're only matching or non-matching exercises. So the recommendations must be far more broad-based and at the same time far more customized when we look at the individual subject. And this is why there's so many different movement patterns that are acceptable. The aim is to improve motor skills and to balance or compensate for deficits. This is a quality-focused functional training. So this is always oriented towards the trained subject's everyday life. In whether it's the leisure time, maybe it's the career, maybe it's a transfer to another sports discipline. The aim is always to help the trained subjects to achieve what this person considers as quality of life and not what the trainer regards as an improved quality of life. Functional training wants to improve the lifestyle of the trained subject. This is really important. What we want to achieve in functional training is that we actually promote an activity-focused behavior in everyday life. So the trained subjects should not only be health-focused and fitness-focused when he's in the club and enjoys the presence of the personal trainer. No, we want this person to also behave in an activity-focused way when he goes to work on a bike, for instance. We want to create autonomy, especially in the setting of older people, independent living. If we can achieve this, if we can improve this situation, and this is a huge task considering the aging society we're faced with, the demography. We want to move people to actually opt for independent living. As long as I only move my leg, my leg extensor, and I just train my muscle, if I don't learn to use this for my everyday life, then my quality of life is not better. My thicker thigh doesn't really do me any good. It probably helps my reputation. People find it nice, but it doesn't benefit me. But as soon as I learn to apply this higher strength to get up the stairs quickly, to carry my bag along, by systematically training this, I actually help people to obtain more autonomy. 1/4 of those who are currently in nursing homes, who are caught in nursing homes, are just immobile. They just can't make ways. And the sickness funds have understood this, and this is why the focus on increased autonomy is a key to increased recognition for our sport. It's about efficiency, and it's also about safety. The example of the mother, for instance, if she actually stumbles, she needs to be able to move quickly to hold the kid. And this is what we would train by actually increasing the muscle power in the thigh. Safety in everyday life. And this is why we say we use as many variations in exercises as possible for our functional training. The expert considerations found that asymmetrical patterns are important, that we try to learn to work in many different directions where we can use muscle power. So what we do in functional training is always a simulation of natural movement patterns. So I look at the everyday life of my customer first, try to reflect it, try to build it into or integrate it into a safety-oriented program, and then actually train what he or she needs, all the way down to sports people who want to just improve on their pattern, their movement patterns. And functional training is an old thing. We've known it from Turnvater Jan, the good old days. There's so many markets available. And the question is what we see here, what is the purpose of lifting this tire for this person here? Maybe she works with a tire dealer and it may be helpful, but apart from that, there are many, many exercises that don't seem to make sense. And this is why it is so important, and it was so important to just give it some thought, to just ponder on what functional training really means, this term. What is this functional training? Now, that we have a rough idea of what functional training really is and why, what makes it special, we can actually apply it to the various dimensions of quality. This is a chart that we can also find in management presentations. The quality elements of functional training refer to the application, the quality of application. So the viewpoint of the customer is first. Their perspective is first, and not the trainer's viewpoint is first. If he says, well, this is a cool training, no, then the quality of the results, of the outcome, and this also means the increase of functional competencies. Then the quality of values. So functional training is really only functional training if it improves the quality of life and the performance of the trained subject. What does fitness mean? There are various possibilities to define fitness training. One way is to say fitness is the ability to meet everyday's challenges without being absolutely exerted. This is fitness. Maybe you have a different definition, but this is my personal view. So functional training helps the quality of life of our customers. So customers associate their quality of life with our training. And then there is, last but not least, the quality of structure. In functional trainings, I always want to have a look at where customers want to leverage the outcome of the training. So I always have to include the personal trainer's quality. These are just some of the thoughts I wanted to share with you in view of what we understand by quality-oriented functional training. We hope that some of you have taken along some lessons as take-home lessons. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot from the hip. And apart from that, thanks for your attention.